based on what Jan said would be good for the group to hear, and also just based on our work. And I've been with Friends of Sabeel North America for about 5 years, as was said, as the executive director. So from CPT on the ground for those, well, on and off the ground for 8 years, I took on this position. I'll share some information about Christian Zionism. I know you all have seen the video from the Middle East Eye, so I'll share a little bit of a presentation for about a few minutes. And then speaking about FOSNA's efforts to counter Christian Zionism, which includes resources and what we've done specifically. And then to talk about Palestinian liberation theology, how we've put it into practice in the churches here, and then take question and answer, and then speak about the Black Church Network. So that's the order. So to march us into that, let me share a screen on starting the presentation. 1 second. You can see it now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And this is very brief, just addition to the video you've seen, which has given some details. So basically what's happening here in the US is a large part of the evangelical Christian movement is growing. And the organization you saw in the video is Christians United for Israel. And we are countering their efforts. They're part of about, the numbers have been here, about 30 to 50 million who ascribe to Christian Zionism in this country. It's huge, and it just continues to grow. And one of them is Christians United for Israel, that has its annual conferences, well, not this year, but last year, of gathering of up to 5,000 people. And it included having the vice president speak, as well as Benjamin Netanyahu. So just to highlight how the organization provides a moral cover for our own state violence within those spaces, as to continue its state and international violence and colonialism across the world. Let me just show you a few of these slides. It's a lot. I just want to show you a bit. This is, I think I need to disconnect this for you to hear it. So this is a 57-second video I'm going to play.
This week on The Watchman, Israel is strong, secure, and thriving. But outside of Israel's borders, a storm is gathering and enemies are on the march. What comes next? Pastor John Hagee is here to break down where it's all heading and why Christians must not remain silent.
Israel is still the apple of God's eye. Israel has the right to exist. They have the right to secure borders. They have the right to the land that God gave them.
Plus, see Kufai's award-winning short film on how Israelis are helping the children of Middle East refugees and changing hearts and minds. It's a story you won't see anywhere else. This week on The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel and only on TBN.
Just in 57 seconds, you can see the power of their marketing and messaging and outreach in 57 seconds. And it probably sends chills down our spines for those who've been in Palestine and look at the violence of the cooperation on interfaith circles that continue to deny us Palestinians the platform to speak, but rather include us in these multi-joint peace efforts that continue to dehumanize our people. I'll continue with just a few more slides from here. Largest religious group in the US, about 80% of evangelicals believe in the founding of Israel as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Again, up to 30 and plus million Christians in this country of all religious backgrounds and denominations. We have two organizations. There's one that's APAC, American Israel PAC, that is more known in this country than CUFI. And APAC fades in regards to numbers in comparison with CUFI that is not as well known. AIPAC's membership is 100,000. CUFI's membership, as an example, they purport to have increased their members 2 million more, which ups them to 8 million members just for one organization. So it dwarfs AIPAC's influence, both politically and religiously. Politically speaking, these are some of the men that were speakers at the summit, all right-wing religious US politicians. John Hagee was part of the celebration of the Israeli move, the US embassy move to Jerusalem, as well as other politicians. There's a huge rest of this presentation I will not go into. I just wanted to present just some key concepts here. Jen was asking me a couple of questions by email in regards to our recent elections with Biden and Harris, and the issues I think that come up for us is one on a political level, and then some in religious spaces when Palestinian work is challenged with anti-Semitism. So I wanted to address those next before talking about FOSNA's efforts in countering those spaces additionally. In regards to Biden, just a couple of things. There were a few, I was not a part of this, a few Palestinian leaders in the US who were meeting with Biden's campaign before he got elected. And Biden had put the Palestine issue in the religious file of his cabinet as they were planning for success of elections. The Palestinian leaders had a really hard time with this because the response there was, this is not a religious issue. This is a political issue because Christian Palestinians like myself and Muslim Palestinians stand on the same justice ground when it comes to Palestinian rights. Do we see any changes? We don't, without huge support and continuous work from the grassroots and from the religious leaders that FOSNA continues to work with. In regards to anti-Semitism, there have been clear calls on Palestinian justice that included religious dialogue that is peaceful and just from many Jewish groups. And I don't know how that's, and we call it weaponized anti-Semitism, when anti-Semitism is used to silence speech on justice for Palestine. So the weaponized anti-Semitism we confront head on as well as being aware of our own Christian history of centuries of anti-Semitism and addressing that within that context. I want to share with you just for a few minutes about our FOSNA's efforts to counter Christian Zionism, what we've done, and some resources, and also what's coming up for us organizationally on November 29th as part of Liberation Theology Countering That. On our website, fosna.org /counter CUFI, we had done, on there you can see a call to action, and it includes both the grassroots level organizing, which is becoming a local leader, as well as writing to Congress, because we do see the importance of the organizational grassroots efforts working within our representative spaces for hopeful action. And part of that is the continuing education in our own churches. We have a huge toolkit. If you would like more resources, you can visit the toolkit. And it's really very well done, talking about confronting Christian Zionism. Everything from explaining Christian Zionism to understanding the political ideology, theological grounding, its sins, and our efforts to confront it, which included an action, in-person action last year, disrupting the organizing inside when Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking, as well as when our, I guess, continuing to be vice president for now, Mike Pence was speaking, and also included an online action, which included social media this year because of COVID, and it included disrupting their Twitter storms and speaking Palestinian justice within those spaces. The other thing I wanted to share with you was our call on November 29th. We have an effort called, I think I did open one second. Keep Awake, and this is for a call to preach Palestine. So in addition to countering those spaces, we think it's really important to continue to highlight liberation theology, Palestinian liberation theology, Latinx liberation theologies, all liberation theologies within our churches to continue building that grassroots movement and momentum. And part of it is the Keep Awake program. We have signed up 100 churches. We're at 95. We have 5 more churches to sign up to preach Palestine on November 29th and Keeping Awake. Why November 29th? It's the coinciding of Palestinian Solidarity Day with the first Sunday of Advent. And within those spaces, we are asking the churches to support FOSNA's efforts for next year of speaking truth to power within particularly youth Christian circles who are continuing to be hijacked by Christian Zionists and seminary groups. And that's what those funds would help to do for next year. If you'd like also to take a look at the Keep Awake, we have lots of resources if anybody's interested just to see them or to use them in your churches if you belong to any, from prayers to sermons, to artwork, to litanies, to children's stories, hymns and songs, and sharing these resources and joining the effort. Reverend Naim Atik, who founded Sabeel, which means the path, and FOSNA is Friends of Sabeel North America, has also lots of books online if you'd like to delve more deeper into the theological grounding of liberation theology. Reverend Naim Atik and the Sabeel movement. I think at this point, maybe just taking some questions, whether it's clarification for folks, if you have something to share, any feedback. And then after that, I'd like to just maybe for 3 minutes speak about how do we do our intersectionality, multi-racial justice work along with the Black Church Network, just for maybe 3 minutes, and take more questions thereafter. So if we do 2 minutes here. Okay. And this will be very brief. Okay. So in order to build authentic community with the Black Church, we cannot, we did not feel right or cannot, a lot of Palestinian organizers in this country said, why aren't Black people behind our cause? Well, a lot of it is Black people have lots of causes they need to be behind for their own. So we need to work authentically and say, we are behind your cause, and let's see how our liberation theologies intersect and how we can do the justice actions together. And it started with a petition by Black activist organizers of signing a statement and getting anywhere from intellectuals to religious leaders to sign likewise. I just want to read you one statement from that statement. It said, the best of the Black church emerges from a legacy of fighting oppression and speaking truth to power. The prophetic tradition calls us as Black Christians to support the rights, security, and basic human dignity of Palestinian communities. Scripture tells us to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Today, this means joining the movement for justice in Palestine, a struggle so intimately connected to the Black experience in the United States. Black clergy and activists signed onto it. We have something like 66, and then lots of other organizations. I just wanted to show you this, and just as an example of how we were authentically building within different communities. Now, the next part of the project is we have 2 Black activists, one is theologian, one is not, to look at how do we continue to educate within the Black churches and the Black network, the Black-led churches here in this country, and where can we make headways as we do joint struggles and collective liberation. And we're trying to do the same with the Latinx community, Latino community here and their churches next year, as well as the indigenous communities. But we had to choose somewhere to start to create a model of these networks and connections. And that wraps up my presentation